Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. A lot to cover on today's program, the Tuesday edition of the show. Kihei Clark returning for another year at the University of Virginia. Kihei Clark, a national champion, all-ACC performer, and soon to be a super senior with Tony Bennett's bunch. We found that as some very compelling and positive news. We'll chitter-chatter that. Today on the program, we'll talk turf fields and lights at Darden Tao Park and Albemarle County and the potential that comes with turf fields and lights in this community. City Council, Charlottesville, back to in-person meetings, albeit in a very limited capacity. We love government in an in-person setting. And we got a glimpse of local government face-to-face for the first time since the pandemic struck our community. We'll talk those topics and more on the program. Alex Urpí will join us on the show in about 15 minutes today. Just got a text message from Alex Urpí about Blackstone, the hedge fund, buying a student housing company. So institutional investors, Wall Street, now getting more and more into the landlord space. That topic on today's program. Give the show a like and a share anywhere you are watching. Hit the like button and share the show and spread the gospel. We work hard for you. The only thing we ask in return is engagement, sharing of the show, and letting folks know about what we do here on the I Love CVille Network. We'll thank Skooma Boutique Dispensary for being a part of the show. The best dispensary in Charlottesville is Skooma Boutique Dispensary. Skooma Boutique Dispensary with its first location on the downtown mall next to Rapture Restaurant and a new location opening tomorrow on April 20th, 420 on Ellwood Avenue on the UVA corner. Judah Wickhauer is our director. Judah, if we can put on screen how our viewers and listeners can win free coffee for a year from Greenberry's Coffee. The URL is enter.greenberries.com, enter.greenberries.com. Go to that website, enter.greenberries.com. Put in your email address, and you will be in the running for free coffee for a year from Sean and Roxanne Simmons of Greenberry's Coffee, the longest-running coffee roaster in Central Virginia, and Charlottesville's Greenberry's Coffee. Neil Williamson, Free Enterprise Forum. Welcome to the program. We love you, Neil Williamson. I don't often lead with sports, but today I will. Kihei Clark, soon to be a super senior here in Charlottesville and on grounds at the University of Virginia. We have first years, we have second years, we have third years, we have fourth years, but what's the year after the fourth year from a sporting standpoint? Many in the media have dubbed them super seniors. The pandemic has offered basketball players, football players, lacrosse players, field hockey players, tennis players, any collegiate sport, the opportunity of an extra year of collegiate sports. And that's the super senior. Kihei Clark is already a national champion. Kihei Clark is already an all-ACC performer. Kihei Clark should be recognized already as one of the best guards in Virginia basketball history, a man who made arguably one of the best plays in hoops history with the pass to Mamadi Diakite in the Final Four. Kihei Clark announces yesterday around happy hour that he's returning for another year under Tony Bennett and the Virginia men's basketball team. That means Virginia basketball is returning its top 5 scorers, its top 5 performers next year, and will add those 5 players to a recruiting class that is considered by many insiders in the industry to be one of the best classes in the country. Tony Bennett's team is loaded next year. He's got talent in the backcourt and talent in the front court. He's got 2 7-foot centers. He's got a post player in Jaden Gardner that can score in the paint and has a mid-range game that is good as any in the country. He's got a slasher in Franklin that can play defense, and if he can find his jump shot from Indiana fame, before he transferred to Charlottesville while playing for the Indiana Hoosiers. He should be a tremendous contributor next season. And he's got 2 guards in K.A. Clark and Reese Beekman that undoubtedly will stuff the stat sheet. Now, there's been chatter on the message boards and on social media almost questioning or with a frustrated mentality from fans of K.A. returning for another season. I don't understand it. I don't get it. The guy is a proven commodity. I understand that he's a 5'7" player. He can't do anything about his height. I think he plays a lot bigger than he is. Having a man who's got 4 years of experience back on the roster is a reason to celebrate, not a reason to throw shade. And some of the fan base is throwing shade to this announcement that he's returning for a super senior campaign, a 5th year, because he will prevent the development of some of the young talent on the roster. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. Tony Bennett knows how to allocate minutes, and Tony Bennett understands personnel and coaching better than we do as a fan base. Do I expect K.A. to carry the same load as he did this past season? No. Do I expect his minutes to go down? Yes. Does K.A. have some things he has to improve upon? Yes. Decision-making, jump shooting, immediately come to mind. But having a guy of his talent back on the roster is good news, not only for Virginia basketball, but it's good news for Central Virginia, Albemarle County, and the city of Charlottesville. Please realize, when Virginia football and Virginia basketball are doing well, the economy in Charlottesville is doing well. When football is 9-7 on this, when football is winning 9, 10, 11 games a year, the corner's packed, Midtown's packed, the downtown mall's packed, the hotels in Charlottesville and Albemarle County are packed, and the trickle over to Main Street and mom and pop businesses is noticeable. And when the basketball team is performing at top 10, top 5, or ACC championship caliber levels, it's the restaurants, it's the retail, it's the hotels, it's the venues, it's the events, it's our neighbors' businesses, and it's our businesses that benefit. So having guys like Brennan Armstrong and the football team back in the mix, having guys like K.A. Clark and Jaden Gardner back in the mix is not only good for the athletic department at UVA, not only good for Tony Bennett and his staff, Tony Elliott and his staff, but it's good for mom and pops and it's good for Main Street. It's good for our economy. And in an economic climate like the one we have right now that's vulnerable to say the least, supply chain issues, labor shortage issues, a Ukrainian-Russian war, all these things collided at one time along with inflation has created a vulnerable economic ecosystem. Anything we have locally that helps fortify our economy from these vulnerable points is a positive. And having a guy like K.A. back in the mix makes this basketball team better. It makes it better. It's news we should celebrate. Please don't look at it from slowing development of other players because he's taken minutes from them. Instead, look at it as practice being as competitive as it could be. Please look at it as Tony Bennett and his staff having more opportunities on a roster to play players during games, a deeper bench, a deeper roster, seasoned talent. And please look at it as tickets and butts in the seats at Scott Stadium and John Paul Jones Arena. And when you get butts in the seats at those two sports specifically, football and men's basketball, the local economy benefits. And when the local economy benefits, our neighbors, our family benefit. Next topic I want to cover on this program, 7 minutes to Alex Urpí here on the I Love CVille Show. On Friday's edition of Real Talk with Keith Smith, Ned Galloway, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors, highlighted the potential for turf fields and lights at Dardental Park. Watch the show, it was excellent. Keith Smith puts a fantastic product together. on Real Talk. And the concept is straightforward. Albemarle County allocates financial resources to parks in its jurisdiction. One of the parks in Albemarle County that is undoubtedly underperforming is Darden Tow. Darden Tow has soccer fields galore. And if you've been to Darden Tow like I have for soccer with our son, you realize that these fields are in piss poor shape, bad shape. Grass is missing from some of these fields, and it's just dirt, or when it rains, mud. Albemarle County, its government realizes this. And they also realize that this park, Darden Tow, is one of the most used parks from a junior or youth level sports standpoint. On Friday's edition of Real Talk, Ned Galloway, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors, Rio District, highlighted the damaged nature of Darden Tow Park. He also discussed the potential for turf fields at Darden Tow Park. And then he made a cause and effect correlation. If we turf the fields and create more opportunity for play because wear and tear is more sustainable, turf fields allow kids to play on them longer because they sustain or they hold up longer than grass. If we turf the fields, we might as well put lights around these fields as well. Now, there's a neighborhood across the street from Darden Tow, the Cascadia neighborhood, that's very concerned about lights and the light pollution or the impact that these lights will have on quality of life with its neighborhood that's across the street from the park. I want to highlight a couple things. Excuse me. Today's technology with lighting is incredibly innovative. The lights no longer glow horizontally or across the peripheral. Instead, the lights shine downward in targeted fashion. So the light pollution that we may know or remember from high school football stadiums where the lights you can see from miles away, not so much the case now. The lights are very targeted in their glow and their trajectory of lighting. Second, real estate values. Homeowners, as they should be, always concerned about real estate values. You put a park across from a neighborhood with sales 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, 900,000 and up. And the homes at Cascadia are large, they're beautiful, they're luxurious, they're new, and they are undoubtedly, call it 500K to $1 million plus. You put a park with fantastic amenities directly across the street from the neighborhood. I can assure you the values of those neighborhoods will go up and will reflect the amenity-rich nature of the park. You take real estate and you put it across the street from amenities, that real estate's going to increase in value. I don't buy the argument that lights and turf field will impact or damage the value of the neighborhood. I don't buy that at all. I want to take even more of a broad view on this. Of all the parks in Albemarle County, the one potential, and Neil Williamson, I'm going to get to this comment, it's a really good comment. Of all the parks in Albemarle County, the one with the most potential for regional sports tourism, I think, is Darden Tow. You got proximity to the interstate. You got proximity on the east side of town to Richmond, where there's a hell of a lot of soccer. You got vast acreage, you turf Darden Town and you put lights around Darden Town, the opportunity for regional sports tourism is evident and tangible. That's something I've championed for an extended period of time on this network. From a short-term Albemarle County standpoint, the jurisdiction should do right by us as taxpayers and as citizens by taking a park in Darden Town, improving it, and taking it from a low performance level to a higher performance level. And one way of doing that is by turfing the fields. When it rains at Darden Town, kids are playing soccer in mud puddles. It's a fact. I've seen it firsthand with my kid. There's too much foot traffic and athletic activity at that park to have the park in the shape it is right now. If you're going to spend the money to turf the fields, and turfing the fields is not going to be cheap, and it's going to be taxpayers that bear the brunt of this infrastructure improvement. If you turf the fields, you might as well light the fields as well so kids can play after dusk and at later times of the day. Because if you expand the window of opportunity of play, you can get more contests and games played in. Kids can play at 6, they can play at 7. And Neil Williamson makes this point. I'm not taking any sides on Darden Town, he says, but neighbors are also concerned about increased traffic with lit soccer fields and lit fields and the traffic that comes with that lighting. That's a fair point. That is a fair point. There's no question that the traffic will increase around Cascadia and around Darden Town Park. But the counterpoint to that statement is, hey, you bought a house across from a park. You bought a house in the urban ring. You bought a house in an area where traffic is evident and was expected when you made that purchase. Kevin Yancey, king of Waynesboro, says, Pantops is a zoo without any increased traffic. That's another fair point. Pantops Free Bridge in particular is a zoo. But here's the reality. That area of town is the urban ring and where development is supposed to happen. I was having this conversation yesterday with Judah Wickower, respected member of the team, 10-year colleague, all-around smart guy and A+ thinker. That's you, J-Dubs. Do you have the 2-shot? Say hello to everybody. And to Judah's credit, you have...
Hello, everybody.
You have the heart of a Samaritan.
Okay.
You have a big, massive heart that's caring and sympathetic and empathetic and kind. You are a kind person.
Thank you.
You are. I often find myself in respect and in awe of your kindness, your patience, your empathy, and your golden rule mentality. I often ask myself, or often find myself saying, I wish I had more of that. The patience in particular, the kindness, and the even-keeledness. And yesterday, the community saw your kindness and your sympathy and your empathy when we were talking housing. And you took the stance yesterday of...
I don't know that I took a particular stance. I certainly wasn't implying that people should be giving away rent or housing for free. If that's what anyone thought, I apologize. I was simply asking the question, trying to understand the, I guess, the delta between what you need to make to cover your costs and how much you charge. And I'm not suggesting that people set, the cost of their rentals like just above how much they need so that they're not actually making any money. They're just paying their costs. That's not what I was suggesting. I I'm sure that there is a sizable delta between what would cover your costs and what you're actually renting it for. And my question was just more of an exploratory, how do you decide how much you need? And apparently the consensus is that that whatever the market tells you that you have to charge, that's what you charge.
Well, I went back and watched the show again. And one of the things that makes our team great is we're two very different people. And when we position our skill sets in complementary fashion and working together, pretty dynamite and dynamic team. And we've proven that over a decade here. Right?
Yep.
And when I went back and watched the show, you saw that inherent difference, the yin and yang. Where I was offering the housing perspective very much from a free market mentality. Very much.
And I understand that mentality, and I understand, that these are investments, and they're not, people don't buy rental properties to house people for, what's the word I'm looking for?
Peanuts?
No, for
philanthropic reasons?
Yeah,
altruistic
exactly.
reasons?
Yeah, altruistic. You're not buying rental properties to give them away.
But I guess where I'm coming from, and Vanessa Parkhill, Vanessa, are you watching The Queen of Earlysville? She made this comment, and it was to your point. We talked about housing, and I said it's the landlords that don't determine the price. It's the tenants that can determine the price. The landlords are going to offer a price for their rentals. Mm-hmm. And if the tenants say no or don't choose to rent the properties at that price, the landlords will drop their price until it's at an equilibrium point that the tenants are happy and the landlords are happy.
Right.
Vanessa Parkhill made the point, and she's the Queen of Earlysville. We love her quite a bit on this program. We respect her contributions. She made this point yesterday. Well, housing is a little different because people need places to live. I was comparing the housing to used cars, cheeseburgers, and I said, if the restaurants charge $20 for a cheeseburger and the customer continues to pay the $20 for the cheeseburger, that becomes the price. The customer can say, no, I'm not going to buy the cheeseburger at that price, and the restaurant will lower it. I said the point with the used cars. If it's $50,000 for a new car and people are buying them, then that's the price. Mm-hmm. Vanessa said, people need a place to live. Housing is different than cheeseburgers and even vehicles because people need a place to live. They can't be homeless. So she said that maybe, this is what she implied, she alluded that, yes, the customers or the marketplace determine the pricing and not the landlords themselves. But the landlords have a little bit more leverage than the cheeseburger comparison because the folks need a place to sleep, to get out of inclement weather, to have safety and shelter for their kids. Where the cheeseburger at Citizen or Jack Brown's or the Whiskey Jar or Hamilton's or Dairy Market could be more of a luxury item.
You don't have to eat out.
You don't have to eat out. And it's a fair point. And I think yesterday we saw with you your lens of the world that came from more of an empathetic and kind and good-hearted scope.
Again, I wasn't advocating for people to not make money on their rental purchases.
I know you weren't. I respected your take. My take was more from a school of hard knocks, free market, small business capitalistic scope.
And I believe in the free market.
I know you
do.
Somewhere there's common ground.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle of that Venn diagram.
Mm-hmm.
Between our two takes.
Right.
Neither is wrong. But somewhere in the middle is probably the best spot. And I bring this up in comparison or in relation to Dardentow Park. and this park that's underperforming currently.
How does a park? I don't know anything about parks, at least not performance-wise. So how is it based on people renting fields for games?
How it's underperforming is the fields are in terrible shape.
Okay.
And they're in terrible shape because they have such high usage. It's the park that has, I would say, and someone may be able to correct me with this or not, one of the highest usages of any Albemarle County park, I would bet, is Dardentown. Someone correct me with that. McIntyre Park is up there as well. McIntyre Park is City of Charlottesville, isn't it? That's got to be City of Charlottesville. So we'll stay focused. So many kids are utilizing this park to play sports that their wear and tear is destroying the quality of the fields. Mm. And when it rains, the kids are playing soccer in mud puddles because the grass is pretty much non-existent. It's like our backyard. You've been in my house. My backyard is in tough shape. When you got 200-pound German Shepherds running around a backyard and destroying it, the grass is going to go away.
Yeah.
Same thing with the park. So here, Albemarle County's government realizes, Ned Galloway straight up said it on the show on Friday. Neil Williamson was there, president of the Free Enterprise Forum. Keith Smith does a great job with Real Talk. And he said, we all realize that Dardentown's in bad shape. He said, we all realize, Board of Supervisors, that we got to invest money into it. We all realize that because of the traffic at Dardentown, that grass is probably not the best approach because it cannot withstand the wear and tear. We all realize that turf may be the best option. And then he did a cause and effect. If we turf the fields, do we then go ahead and light the fields to increase the playability? If there's lights on the fields,
you can play
older
later.
Kids can play later at night and get their games in. And then I immediately, because this is one of the aspects of the campaign for Board of Supervisors, highlighted sports tourism. And he said, obviously there's that, but even more important is the service and benefit it will provide current Albemarle Countyans. To Supervisor Galloway's credit, he was concerned about citizens today and not the incremental revenue that could come tomorrow. Concerned about citizens today first. He realized the advantage that comes with the incremental revenue down the road, but he was concerned about citizens today, and I respect that. The naysayers, neighborhoods around it, are throwing, pun intended, shade at lights on turf fields because of quality of life impact. It's essentially the NIMBY, not in my backyard mentality. And this NIMBY mentality is not necessarily about increased housing density around the neighborhood. This particular case, the NIMBY mentality, is about increased traffic associated with improving amenities at the park and the traffic that comes with those improved turf fields and lights and more games being hosted at the park.
It sounds like there's already a lot of traffic at the park.
There's
are they
a ton
worried
of traffic
about
there
being more traffic? Are they worried about light pollution if the the field lights are on? You know, I can't imagine they would keep them on past 9 or 10, but that still might be a concern for some people. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, and you're right about the time stamp. It's generally like 9 o'clock, 8, 9, 10 o'clock where the lights go off. But the concern is, if you light and turf the fields, an already congested area of traffic will get additional vehicles on the road, which impacts quality of life for folks living around the park. And my response to that is you bought a house across the street from a park. My response to that is you bought a house across the street from a park, and that park is driving your real estate values upwards because you have a park across the street from your house. Mm-hmm. You then can't leverage the park that's increasing your real estate values and leverage that park in a negative way to keep amenities and improvements from happening to it.
Right.
What's the saying? You can't have your
cake and eat it too.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Vanessa Parkhill is watching the program. She's the queen of Earlysville, and she's just dynamite. Just absolutely dynamite. She says, our family spent years traveling out of the area for athletic events. Albemarle County is missing out on a huge opportunity. She says, hi, Jerry. Dardental Park should have turf and lights. These fields have been in super high demand for 15 plus years. Kevin Yancey in Waynesboro watching the program. If they can't maintain grass, what makes you think they can maintain the turf? Turf is way easier to maintain than grass, Kevin. Way easier. He says Albemarle County and Charlottesville essentially killed a cash cow by underfunding Parks and Rec and redesigning and or closing ball fields. From the 60s through the 80s, Charlottesville was a destination for slow-pitch softball. Memorial Day through Labor Day, you could not find a hotel room within 75 miles of Charlottesville because of these slow-pitch softball games. I think it's important for us to understand the situation we're in. We are so under-rooftopped in this community that pricing for housing is getting obscenely and uncontrollably expensive. And I've found a disturbing shift in mentality. Now parents and grandparents are almost becoming okay with their children and grandchildren not being able to afford to purchase a home in their respective communities. That is concerning, that parents and grandparents are now shrugging their shoulders and saying, heck, hell, shucks. My kids are out of luck. My grandkids are out of luck. It's almost, is apathy. Apathetic.
Apathetic.
Apathy is a terrifying emotion. Because when you're apathetic, I would much rather anger be present than apathy. Because apathy is a sign of giving up. Mm-hmm. Anger, while clouding your judgment, is a sign that you're not ready to quit the fight. And the apathy that is arising with housing is disturbing, demoralizing, depressing. Stakeholders and us as leaders must fight apathy. And I'm not saying we shift the emotion to anger, but it should be undoubtedly pivoted to engagement. And what can we do about this? Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted to highlight with you your kind-heartedness, your open-mindedness, your patience, and your all-around golden rule mentality. For so long, the line in the sand has been, we leaders have houses and own real estate. Our values are going up. Why do we need to think creatively about creating more housing when additional inventory could just diminish price point increase? And that's wrong. Questions, comments coming in. Vanessa's got a son in Lee Parkhill who was a dynamite football player and all-around athlete. He said she says when Lee's Pop Warner team was heading to the playoffs late in the season, the families all pinched in to rent lights so the boys continue practicing at Hollymead. Also, local businesses agreed to pitch in to offset the light rental costs. That's the kind of community I want to live in. Woody Fitchman says this, an appraiser of tremendous proportions, the founder of Finchman and Associates. It's a greater good issue. The community needs the park and expanded usage of lights, and expanded usage of parks. Licensed U.S. youth soccer coach here, Woody is, turf is a better answer. If you need an appraiser, Woody Fitchman is a great choice for you. We have to shift the mentality of apathy with housing to a mentality and emotion of engagement, creativity, open-mindedness, and what can we do about our children to get a slice of the dream that has built us wealth. If we don't change it, our kids, millennials and younger, have got a very slim chance of living in the communities they have called home for so long.
And I might add that I think some of the people that are already living there might run into issues. I mean, we've talked, or you've talked before on the Real Talk show about what happens to, what happens to elderly people when their neighborhood gets gentrified, and all of a sudden they can't afford the taxes on the home they've been living in for 40, 50 years because they're on a fixed income.
And what could help offset gentrification associated with rising real estate taxes? What helps offset that?
Tax rebates? I don't know.
That helps. Another answer would be additional rooftops that create more revenue for the jurisdiction. And if the jurisdiction has more revenue coming from additional newly constructed rooftops by expanding the developmental area, that additional revenue goes to the jurisdictional coffers. And if the jurisdictional coffers have additional revenue, then they can alleviate the burden on current homeowners because they have other sources of income.
Hopefully. That's no guarantee that jurisdictions would. We're talking about tax assessments, right?
We're talking about assessments, and we're talking about real estate tax rates.
Yeah.
And if you have additional rooftops and people living in them, you also have more revenue associated with personal property taxes, vehicles, boats, motorcycles, trucks, cars.
Yeah. So I mean, it is to be hoped that that if that were the case, then assessments and all the other things, all of that would come down and make things more affordable. But it's certainly no guarantee. We know what jurisdictions do once they have a certain amount of money. They're loath to give it up.
It's a good topic to consider. Let's get Alex Urpí, the Antonio Banderas of finance, in the house. Alex Urpí is in the green room right now. He was fantastic on Real Talk this morning. I think he got a little, did you get a little lunch in between the episodes?
Yep.
Sombreros?
I went Marco and Luca today.
Oh, Marco and Luca.
Marco, a little hot and sour.
The man loves dumplings.
I do love my dumplings, and I love my hot and sour soup on a chilly day.
Our friend Alex Urpí is the co-star of Today y Mañana. Alex at Xavier, 2 of the 4 principles of Emergent Financial Services. Find them online, emergentfinancialservices.com. So much I want to cover here. The headline comes out that a hedge fund, Blackstone, my wife used to work for Blackstone. Somehow I was able to charm her down here to Charlottesville from a hedge fund gig. Blackstone is
That's a great achievement in and of itself.
She occasionally reminds me this, and the trajectory she was at. And now she's a fantastic behind-the-scenes guiding light with our businesses. Blackstone, this is the headline. Blackstone, the hedge fund, adds student housing to its portfolio with a $13 billion deal.
Yep.
12.8 to be exact. I'll read the first few paragraphs and then get your take. Blackstone Inc. is betting big on U.S. property with the deal to buy student housing operator American Campus Communities Inc. for $12.8 billion. The all-cash transaction is the largest student housing deal by the Blackstone Real Estate Income Trust. It's a REIT. Just short of the $97 billion, the fund it has is $97 billion. Mm-hmm. So $12.8 billion out of $97 billion doesn't really put a huge dent into what they're working with. Blackstone last year invested $784 million in a joint venture with Landmark Properties. The New York-based Blackstone has been scooping up U.S. housing assets of all kinds as the pandemic reshapes where Americans work and live, which along with low borrowing costs and supply constraints have driven a boom in property values across the country and led to the sharpest monthly rent increase in decades. Alex Urpí, anywhere you want to go?
It's an interesting topic, and glad to be back.
Of course.
I love always being here every Tuesday. I always enjoy also the Tuesdays where I get to do double duty. I get to do Teet's wonderful show, Real Talk in the morning, and then come back an hour later.
We'd love to have you.
And do this one. Two things come to mind. A, we were talking this morning about the School of Data Sciences, and my first initial thought was, isn't that part and parcel of it, that as you have more students who will need more housing, you will have companies like Blackstone, I should say, that swoop in here and say, all right, let me get in this market. Let me get in the market of student housing where, I mean, you're talking rent, you're talking dorms in the case of certain schools, you're talking required dorming. So just the operation, the management, the ownership, it's all heavily involved. And we've seen here just what incoming students can do to apartment prices. We've talked to, I mean, I've known some realtors who will tell me 2021 when the student year was starting, I mean, you had apartments that would be gone in a day. This idea, if you didn't have a triple escalation clause, you would be outbid by students' parents who were willing to pay for them to be in that apartment. Second thought is, this is, of course, the risk of the high prices that we're seeing in housing and the high interest rates pricing out people who cannot compete with the all-cash offer. So the major firms with tons of money in their pocket that can come in and put an all-cash offer on homes with the idea of then turning around and renting them, because they have such a long time horizon that they can outcompete people and basically continue to just rake in the cash flow as rents go up. So it's a lot about the environment that I think we are seeing, and the risk of people who want to be in homes not being able to. I mean, it's hard enough, as we were talking this morning, for millennials to compete with downsizing baby boomers. Now millennials are competing with downsizing baby boomers and Blackstone, who can afford a $13 billion all-cash offers.
It is. I'm going to throw it back to you. I'm going to read one more paragraph. American Campus is the nation's largest owner, manager, and developer of high-quality student housing communities. It owned 166 student housing properties with about 111,900 beds as of December 31, 2021. And if you look at the American Campus website, it is americancampus.com. Let me confirm that here. You see on the homepage of americancampus.com, if you scroll down, you will see that they have positions in Virginia, in the Commonwealth. So institutional investing, I mean, Blackstone is arguably the most influential hedge fund in the world. I mean, BlackRock is up there as well, as you've mentioned. Jumping in the housing game convolutes the waters even more. Other perspective you want to offer here?
And it's a signal, I think, because we'll often have people who will then come to us and say, is this a problem? Is this some kind of unethical dealing and things like that? And my point is always, this is a signal, right? If the housing market is in equilibrium, then there's not too much. Let's face it, a firm like Blackstone gets into this because they're seeing a difference between what they can afford and where the potential is. They're seeing arbitrage opportunities. Those opportunities exist where the markets are in an equilibrium. Right? If supply and demand are in good position and they're keeping up, you do not have firms that come in there and try to and think that they can squeeze a lot of value out of that. When you have shortage of supply, you have firms that come in and try to get in on this because they are seeing numbers indicating some kind of dysfunction that they can then get in and collect arbitrage on the difference between what they can get in at and what they think, where they think the price is going.
Alex Urpí, guys, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. This concerns me. Why Why this concerns me is Charlottesville and Albemarle County are protected and insulated markets thanks to the university. Why this also concerns me is something that I've been trying to highlight is this data science school, which is going to have incredibly positive impacts for this community. We're going to have one of the best schools ever in this community. Best data science schools in the world on Ivy Road. We also know that there's going to be a ton of businesses and companies that are setting up shop here to poach the talent and then to take that talent and position it in six-figure jobs here locally, which is going to further cannibalize the housing stock locally. That's why I've said on the show, we talked about it this morning, that I think the worst is still yet to come from an inventory standpoint and from an affordability standpoint. Your thoughts on any of these topics?
Yes, I mean, I definitely agree on the concept of the inventory standpoint, the affordability standpoint. The one positive, obviously, is firms here, hiring people here, is much more beneficial to Charlottesville in terms of the local economy and the rest of us benefiting in the upswing of growth than some of what we've seen pandemic era of firms located in Northern Virginia, their people living here and working remotely. So in other words, someone living here working remotely for a company in Northern Virginia is their company, the economic growth being generated by that is all the way in Northern Virginia, it's somewhere else. That company is going to be inclined to put money back in their own community wherever that's located. A firm here, if this data science school spurs firms to come here in Virginia and hire local people and not bring in people from outside, I think that's a much more positive economic growth picture that might help. In other words, if that can push up salaries and wages for people already living here to be then able to afford more housing, I think that can be a more beneficial kind of economic growth than the person coming in being paid by a firm outside of town. So I think on the flip side, I think that's a more promising prospect than some of what we've been seeing in the last year or so.
We hope that it's in-house talent, in-house hires, in-market hires that happen, as opposed to folks from out of market. Three-shot, we're on the three-shot. Jude, I see the wheels turning, something that's on the brain.
Not necessarily. I think that, I don't know. I think there's a solution somewhere around here that's between, one extreme and the other, and that's usually where the best answer lies. It's just a matter of working it out, and that's the hard thing because you've got government and you've got individuals, and their interests aren't always aligned, and their belief systems aren't always aligned. We often have, we've got a bunch of capitalists, and that's we don't think of that as a bad thing, but some people do, and sometimes you get such a gap in beliefs that it's hard to come to a compromise.
Do we think, what do you think the footprint of UVA is going to eventually become? I mean, when we were in school there, you and I were at different times at school there. When I was in school there, you had grounds, and then you had the JPA corridor, Jefferson Park Avenue corridor, and JPA would go probably as far as Fry Springs Station, maybe to Fry Springs Station. The students that were in the Fry Springs Station corridor were more grad students. Shamrock to Student Health was more undergrads. I lived on grounds first year at Dabney Old Dorms, and then Lambeth Commons second year, third year in the fraternity house, fourth year off 14th, I think that's 14th. The road that is right there next to Orbit, now Boylan Heights. Now you see the footprint of grounds down West Main Street. You have the footprint of grounds on the other side of JPA that's heading more toward Fry Springs Beach Club, where students are at, Stribling, Cleveland. The footprint is expanding. And why we highlight that is this is housing that otherwise was going to locals, that is going to students. And as they admit more students, they need somewhere to live. Your thoughts on how this footprint expands more?
Part of what it is it pushes the middle class further away from the city center. because the students are always going to need to live very close to grounds because there is no parking at UVA. So as the grounds expand and the students, that reign of students, you see it kind of with the city as well. You see the middle class probably just keeps getting pushed out more and more to the peripheries, and then travel in and out of the city becomes key there. In other words, what's your cost to actually, you can no longer afford to live close. If you work in the city, you can no longer afford to live in the city. Therefore, how far out do you end up being, and how expensive is it for you to travel back and forth? How much time do you lose? I mean, to Judith's point, it is the balance. My dad is, I know he's talked about this a couple times, Xavier, that, you know, as someone who came from New York City, he doesn't want, right, his goal is not for Charlottesville to become like New York City, in the sense of you have so much population density that you're so far out that it takes you so long to get to work and back, that your quality of life, yes, is everyone wealthier? In a sense, has GDP doubled, tripled, because you have all these people making 6-figure salaries? Yes. But has your quality of life in some ways declined? Right, and that's the balance, right? Because growth is good, economic growth, and I mean, no one in this equilateral triangle of content is going to dispute, right, that economic growth is a good thing. We all like it. But at what point have you sacrificed some of the quality of life that made Charlottesville like one of the top retirement places? Is it still going to be one of the top places to retire if you're a senior and the only place you can afford to live is actually Albemarle County, which is 30 minutes away now from the Symphony, 30 minutes away from sports, 30 minutes away from eating downtown? Is it still the best place to retire? Or are you like, let me look for a town that's less small and has less growth, ironically enough? And so it's the balance.
Well said.
And is the GDP of the area growing because you're getting an influx of people that are making more money, and the people that are making less money are getting pushed out? Or, you know, is it, you know, is there an imbalance that's creating that, you know, that growth? And yeah, it looks like the area is doing well, but it just means that more cops and more, you know, restaurant workers and more, you know, janitors,
nurses, teachers
are having to go find places in, you know, in Green and, you know, wherever else that they can actually afford to live.
Great take, both you guys. I would say that is literally what's happening. And it's unfortunate.
It is. It's the challenge that I think a lot of places like UVA, where you've got a town based around a college that is a very well-known and good college, are facing. It's the old per capita GDP problem. Right? What you want is per capita growth, like per person GDP growth. Because I can tell you right now how to double Charlottesville's GDP, and it's to double the number of people living here. But everybody living here will be making the exact same amount of dollars that they're currently making. So no one living here will be better off, but the GDP looks like it's doubled. What you really want is, does that growth come with people already living here becoming more successful?
So how about this question from Kevin? Then how do you improve the GDP with folks locally?
That's the challenge. It really needs to be things that encourage.
Kevin Spencer, thank you.
That's a great question. For local, it seems to me it needs to be things that encourage people to spend and participate locally. The way you grow per capita is that money does not leave the area. In other words, money in Charlottesville gets circulated more frequently. Right? Because in other words, I buy from you, you buy from, you go out to eat. That person who you went out to eat pays another local person. They're more successful. And as that money goes around, the same dollars, everybody per capita is more successful. And obviously, growth of population can sometimes have that effect. In other words, if you create a new position and you hire someone in Charlottesville and you pay them $100,000 a year, as long as they spend that money locally, that $100,000 actually ends up boosting per capita everyone. But if you bring in a bunch of people and pay them $100,000, right, and you bring in so many that the expense of everything rises, you're losing some of that benefit of their increased spending power. So it's all about, like you just said, finding that balance. What's the balance between the growth that comes from more successful people living here versus the detriment of quality of living and cost of living that comes from more successful people living here.
I would love to see, and you guys are both on point, Judah and Alex Urpí, guys, I love Tuesdays with these guys. I would love to see a stronger commitment for education with locals, especially the underserved demographic of locals in this community, people of color, from a science, technology, engineering, math, and data science standpoint. We all see the future of vertical revenue earnings is tied to data science, math, coding, engineering, technology, science. We need, and Michael Buchensky mentioned this in a show last week, we need, Dr. Wes Bellamy is doing a good job of this. We need either an individual, a group of individuals, a nonprofit, or maybe it's like an offshoot of the university of somehow that has a educational infrastructure system in place for locals, for kids, the next generation of workers, to gain the STEM knowledge that it needs to fill these jobs that are opening with companies cherry-picking talent from UVA. We also could benefit from a stronger commitment to the trades.
That's what I was going to add to that.
Electrical, plumbing.
The things that cannot be replaced
Cannot be replaced by technology.
By technology. Nobody's going to pay a robot to go in and do the plumbing in their kitchen.
And the plumbers and the electricians are paid bank. So maybe the commitment is done by stake leaders in the community, and it's either funded by government or by UVA, or a group of deep-pocketed individuals creates it. Maybe it's a nonprofit. And they create 2 educational ecosystems. One of them for trades, plumbing, electrician, carpenter, brick mason, sorely needed. And another one for science, technology, engineering, math, coding. Thoughts on this? Judah, something you want to add to this? Alex, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, in reality, that's your best, from a total economic standpoint, that's your best scenario. In other words, the person who grew up in Charlottesville, goes to school here, goes to UVA here, gets the 6-figure job, that's your best thing. Your population has not increased at all, right? So no additional services needed, no increased cost, but you now have a more successful person in Charlottesville who is now, obviously that money is now helping other businesses grow. To Judah's point of different interest, right? Who's really the one person, sadly enough, who's the one person that does not make more money if the local kid stays here and goes to college here?
If the local kid goes to college here and stays here?
Yeah, who's the one person that loses out versus someone from out of state coming here and going to college here?
Well, the out-of-state person.
UVA.
Why do you say that?
Because they charge double for out-of-state tuition than they do in-state.
So that's why you're seeing UVA admitting more and more out-of-state students. That's
why isn't there like a cap of like 1/3? At least when I was going there, I think it was a cap. There was a cap of in-state students.
That's a good take. Judah, what's on your mind over there?
Well, in terms of getting kids into those, I guess those columns, separating them into, the STEM kids and the K-Tech kids. I mean, I'm not sure how that works around here because I don't know much about how the schools do those things. I remember that in Maine when I was in high school, they gave opportunities to kids to, for instance, I don't know if it started in the junior year, but kids had the opportunity to go to basically the Southern Maine version of K-Tech. So if your kid is not, your kid doesn't need to take advanced chemistry or, advanced
AP calculus.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. They can go and they can spend half the day at K-Tech and learn a skill that they're good at and want to learn. And And maybe in a similar vein, the kids that are aimed at STEM, they can skip out on some of the stuff that they don't need in high school, and find a program. Maybe there's a program somewhere that gets them that STEM learning and prepares them for college, so that they are set up when they leave high school to start doing, whether it's finishing with a few years at K-Tech, or whether it's continuing in STEM learning somewhere. Let's get them prepped for that. And I don't think we've ever talked about anything like this, but high school is so full of stuff that you don't need. Like, do you ever learn how to do your taxes?
Yeah, we've talked about that.
That would be really useful.
Finance.
Do you ever, what do you learn? You learn a bunch of stuff that's kind of standardized for every single student, and we all know that not every single student is the same. So, setting them on the same path of learning seems short-sighted.
Good take. 30% out of state, 70% Virginia residents. You're on point there.
So the cap is 2/3, yeah.
Yeah, 70% in-state, 30% out-of-state enrollment at the University of Virginia. Oh man, such a predicament. That headline that you said about Blackstone getting the student housing was so in line with what we were talking about today.
At the moment I saw it, I said, this is exactly what we were talking about here. And it's part of it will come down, I think, eventually also to us as people in a cultural perspective, is that how many of us taught. I read one time an interesting blogger. There was a blogger who said he taught all the time about trade schools. Don't be afraid. No, not every kid needs to go to a 4-year college to get a liberal arts degree. And then he said when his own son came to him and told him he wanted to go into the basically a mechanic business, he said he vacillated. It was like it took him a while to actually support it. And how many of us talked it? But then if our child, but have we internally bought into the 4-year college that if our own son came to us and said, hey dad, I want to be an electrician, would we balk at it and say, no wait, go to a 4-year college first and then decide? Like, would we balk? And every time we do that, we kind of buy into that mentality of degrading the trades, which pushes a lot of kids who should be in trades into a 4-year liberal arts degree that they come out with a lot of student debt, cannot afford to live in Charlottesville because they're either working for a nonprofit or they're doing some kind of liberal arts work that does not pay enough to live here. And suddenly, like you said, the saddest thing is people that were born here and lived here that end up moving out, and you lose that kind of generational connection that builds an actual community. So instead of an actual Charlottesville community, what you have is just a bunch of people who are only tied together. If all we're tied together by is economics, we're finished. We need to be tied together by more than just that.
Alex Urpí, love this man. Thursday, 10:15 today, Mañana. What do you got, my friend?
So we're going to have on Levi and Thomas from Streamline Plumbing, two great young...
Perfect.
Exactly. Talked about technical tools. I think both these guys are under 25, started their own company. Fantastic.
You lined this
job.
up.
I lined this one up. Levi is a fantastic friend of mine from Bible study, but he's also just a fantastic human being, really smart guy. Talked about one of those STEM engineering geniuses, putting it to work in a local business that they've started. So it's going to be awesome to have them on. And then we're going to have on David Deaton from David Deaton Consulting, so another entrepreneur here in the community, does a lot of work. I know he's done work helping people, CIC classes, teaching, sharing his knowledge on cash flows, how to run a business, things like that. So it'll be fantastic to have two sets of entrepreneurs on the show.
Thursdays, 10:15 a.m. Today y mañana. You got the guest there, J-Dubs, for Thursday's show.
There you go. I don't even have to
I'll still expect an email.
You will get it.
He is one of the best. He's the best, right?
He is the best at keeping up and getting me informed before the show.
Before the show, Alex, he says that all the time.
No, my deadline, I try every day to get by 5 p.m. on Wednesday. Ideally, I do it on Tuesdays, but if I'm behind, by 5 p.m. on Wednesday to get Judah the email.
He said last week, he goes, I never worry about Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've ever sent you the initial email on Thursday morning. On Thursday morning, it would be an emergency, like someone can't make it,
Right,
someone
right.
added someone.
Some of those emails come into us 12 minutes before the show starts.
Yeah, I know. Occasionally, the
He's
desk,
got no comment. You can see his face.
which I try to avoid. Those are the ones where the
No, it's not you
oh
that
yeah,
does it.
those are the ones
Yeah.
where like you got the desk and said,
Yeah.
"Hey, we're both coming," and I'm like, "Both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd the second person come
It's
from?"
not you. It's not you.
Yeah.
He is.
This morning I'm checking my email and it says the Urpies, and I'm like, let's see, there's 4 of them. I'm pretty sure not all 4 of them are coming on the show. So
You made the right call.
Maybe I should send a text. And is it these 3 or I know that we've had these 3 before, but
You made the right call.
no sense assuming.
Alex Urpí, guys, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. He's the co-star of Today Mañana, airs Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille Network with Xavier Urpí as well. Judah Wickower is A+ people. He's our director and contributor to our shows, most notably on our Tuesday shows. Gentlemen, job well done, bravo.
Well done.
We appreciate you guys. That's a wrap for the I Love CVille show on a Tuesday. We're back tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. with Scott Morris and Christy Beck on Real
I'm
Talk
tuning
with
into
Chris
that
Smith.
one. As a millennial potential future home buyer, I'm tuning into that show.
That's a good one. Christy is killing it right now on the Maggie Gunnels team. Thank you kindly for joining us. You guys have a good afternoon. Take care. Bravo, Alex.
Excellent show, guys. I was listening, even the part I was listening to in the dream room. Excellent.
Awesome.